Thank you for joining me today. My name's Lucy Painter. I'm the Director of Studio Recruitment, which is a company that specialises in helping interior designers find work, from graduates right up to director level. I'm also the author of In with the Interior Design Crowd, which is a book for people at your level, graduates and junior interior designers looking to launch their interior design career. Now today I would like to give you a short video on hints and tips of what to include and what not to include on your CV. Quite often, people don't give the CV as much attention as they do their portfolio of work. So today, in this short video, I'll be discussing things that you should include and also things that you might be unsure of whether to include or not. For example, a photo or work samples. Now let's get a pen and paper ready and I will talk you through the following points. Think about dividing your CV into different sections. You'll have your profile, which some people call your summary, your key skills area, your education, your computer skills, so the software that you're confident using, and then your work experience, which you also include your project experience. Now, the profile section, I know quite a lot of people struggle with this because they don't know what to put. But in short, it is a summary of you about what you're looking for. Now, the most common mistake I find is that people often start each sentence in the profile section with the word I. And I know that can be tricky to avoid, but I'm just going to read you a short example from a CV that I've recently had, which I thought was really good. So it goes, during my time as a graduate interior designer, I had the opportunity to work in a design studio that specialised in retail and hospitality projects. Whilst I was there, I helped put together client presentations, I researched and sourced materials and worked on technical drawings using Vectorworks. With a passion for retail interiors, I would love the opportunity to join your studio. If you haven't had any work experience, you can still adapt this so it talks about what skills you do have and that what you're passionate about as well. Now, the key skills area of a CV is really quite important, mainly because when people look at a CV and job applications, they often receive a high number. Therefore, your CV is very likely to be scan read. With this in mind, you want to ensure that the key information is seen quite quickly. Now, as a graduate, you may think, well, I don't have that many key skills, but your degree has enabled you to have lots of skills. I no doubt you've been doing lots of research, you've put mood boards together, you've had skills using either Vectorworks, AutoCAD or Revit, maybe SketchUp, 3D Max or Cinema 4D. You've been doing some visualizing. You've possibly done quite a lot of presentations throughout your course. Really think about all of these areas which are really key skills for when employers are looking for a graduate interior designer. You're going to be involved on all sorts of projects and all different parts of projects as well. When you go into a company as a junior or graduate interior designer, they're looking for someone who's quite agile, someone who can think independently, can work on their own initiative, can bring ideas where you perhaps followed future and current trends. You might have a real keen interest in strategy. So really think about all your key skills and what you can bring to the table so you can stand out amongst other people. You may or may not have had any experience in the industry, but I would like to think that you have had some, even if it was a couple of weeks during the summer, or hopefully you have done an internship or placement as part of your degree. It's so important to put this on your CV. It's also really important to list the projects you've had exposure to. Some people say to me, well, I only worked on the presentation of a very small project. Put it on your CV. You'll begin to find throughout your career that when people hire an interior designer and they look at your CV, they're looking at your project exposure because they're hiring you on what projects you've had exposure to. So, for example, if in your internship you did some mood boards for a residential project, you did some layouts for a hotel, or you might have done some visuals for a retail client. Put all of that information on your CV. You also want to include any perhaps project experience of projects you may have done as students and in groups, or even projects that you've done as part of your degree. Don't underestimate putting that information on there. The more you can have on there at your level, the better. It's really important with computer skills that you only put down software that you are actually confident in using. If, for example, you've only used the software 3D Max once or twice and really don't feel comfortable using it or wouldn't be comfortable using it in a working environment, don't put it on your CV. However, what I would say is that there will probably be an opportunity between now and when you start looking for work over the summer periods to really upskill in the computer software you're not that confident in using. Now, different companies use different software, so we tend to find a lot of the retail and hospitality consultancies use Vectorworks. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying a high majority. Companies that are architects with interior design teams tend to use AutoCAD, and the residential sector and hotel sector tend to use AutoCAD. Revit is coming into companies, and you do tend to find a lot of architectural practices use Revit. But as a graduate interior designer, obviously put the software that you've been confident using during your degree. But there is no reason why you can't download a free trial for other software and look at YouTube videos and other tutorials that are online to upskill. Because you'll probably find that, for example, if you've been using AutoCAD, you'll probably pick up Vectorworks quite quickly. A lot of other companies for their 3D side of things either use 3D Max, so if they're more AutoCAD based, they tend to use 3D Max, and if they're Vectorworks based, they tend to use Cinema 4D. Now, that's just a general rule. I'm not saying that's like that for every company, but I would suggest to try and be at least confident in either 3D Max or Cinema 4D. And more often people are using SketchUp, which is a really good tool to help in the concept stage of a project, which you may have already used during your degree. A lot of people ask me, should they put a photo on their CV? My advice would be no. I guarantee if you're invited to an interview, they will search you anyway, and they'll be able to see your photo on social media. With this in mind, I would start making sure your privacy settings are secure. Also, a lot of people say, should I put work samples on my CV? You can do, and some people have a CV and then their portfolio afterwards, which is absolutely fine. So they don't send 2 documents, they just send 1. If you are sending 2 documents, so a CV and portfolio, perhaps only restrict the work samples you put on your CV to a couple of images. That might be a sketch, it might be a visual, so feel free to put it on there, but just don't overload it, because your CV is really important to show your key skills, your project experience, and to find out a little bit more about you. The other thing I would say in regards to your address, if you, for example, are looking for work in London, but you don't currently live in London, take your address off your CV. The reason being is if, for example, I look at a CV and somebody lives in Huddersfield, now I might be hesitant to ask you in for an interview because I will be conscious you've got to travel down to London. I may not know if you're going to have accommodation when you get here if we offer you the job. So take your address off your CV. And the other point I'd make is just be really conscious of your file size of your CV and portfolio. The combined file size shouldn't be any bigger than 15 megabytes. A lot of people say, well, I've got a web link. Now, because if you think of the volume of applications for junior and graduate interior designers that companies have to go through. If, for example, you were having to sift through 130 emails, would you click on a web link? Most probably not. You'd probably just look at the attachments that are there. So by all means, have everything on a web link, but do also send your CV and portfolio as a PDF within 15 megabytes. Hopefully this short tutorial has given you a little bit of an insight into what you should put on your CV. I would recommend looking at my book In with the Interior Design Crowd, as it has lots of examples in there of profile sections, key skills, do's and don'ts, and also a lot of designers in the industry have contributed to this book. So we will, in the next video, talk about portfolios, but I would highly recommend getting the book so then you've got all of the information to hand when you are writing your CV and portfolio.